Anyone can create money. The hard part is having others accept it.
In recent weeks, demand for the dollar has increased. We've been selling it at 690 francs per unit. Sometimes people come to buy dollars, but we can't give them any because we don't have them.
Welcome back. You're watching The Agenda. Many Africans are cheering. Well, this is because some former French colonies in the region of West Africa are dropping the 75-year-old use of the franc as their common currency.
The heads of state of the Economic and Monetary Union of West Africa have made the choice to preserve macroeconomic stability.
The tragedy of Africa is that the African man has not yet entered history. The problem with Africa is that they invent themselves a mythical past so that they can cope with the present instead of building a future for themselves with their own means.
Without Africa, he declared, France will have no history in the 21st century.
Much of the money in French banks comes precisely from exploiting Africa, and that France would lose its global standing without its African empire.
Welcome guys, Economic Savant, and welcome to my channel where we unravel the mysteries of finance and economics. Vandaag, we are diving deep into the enigmatic world of CFA franc.
The CFA franc.
The CFA franc.
The CFA franc.
The France Afrique.
The France Afrique, a currency that's shrouded in controversy and intrigue.
In the words of Italy's foreign minister, if France didn't have its African colonies, because that's what they should be called, it would be the 15th largest world economy. Instead, it's among the first, exactly because of what it's doing in Africa.
So, get ready to question everything, and I mean everything, because we'll explore its origins, impact, and the complex web of geopolitics that surrounds it. Already, let's start. Have you ever wondered to yourself, what an illusion truly is? Is it something we see? Is it something much more profound? To understand this illusion, we must first grasp the concept of value itself. It ties into the very matter. What is value, guys? It's a question that has perplexed the minds of men for centuries. But vandaag, we're diving headfirst into the world of CFA franc and its influence. So, what exactly is the CFA franc and why is it a subject of such controversy? Kabutsisa guys, king is CFA franc. Is it a legal tender, economic suicide, or a financial instrument or poison? King, is it a psychological scam?
Never saw you coming. You see what you want to see.
Or an instrument of economic warfare? What is it? Well, it's all of the above. The CFA franc is the name of two African currencies pegged to the euro with a fixed exchange rate. The first is the Central African franc, used by 6 African countries, and the second is the West African CFA franc, used by 8 African countries. But question and here's the real question. Why does France still have monetary control over its former colonies? Let's embark on that historical journey. Our story begins 26th December 1945. Just after the Second World War, decolonization was in the air, and many African countries sought freedom from France's colonial grasp. But France, weakened after the war, couldn't maintain military control over its 14 African colonies. France faced the dilemma, these people never broke.
Because, you know what? I'm fucking broke, dude.
They couldn't afford to send their armies to all these African countries. Given the war's financial toll and the destruction of their infrastructure, it was bad. But this is where soft power comes into play. France chose the path of soft power, utilizing economic policies and CFA franc as a weapon born from tanks to banks. Because with banks, you can enslave the whole population with loans. But so, they introduced the cooperation agreement, which maintained France's influence over its African colonies. Essentially, France retained control over the nation's currencies and economies under new names. The CFA franc story isn't just about currency, no, it's about power. In Central and West Africa, 14 African countries make up the franc zone, divided into 2 distinct economic and monetary zones. But there are only 2 central banks. 14 countries, 2 central banks. In Central Africa, we have the Economic Monetary Community of Central Africa, comprising of countries like Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Chad, and the Central African Republic. In West Africa, get the West African Economic and Monetary Union, which includes countries like Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, and Niger.
Countries such as Nigeria.
Oops, I meant Niger. The geopolitical implications are staggering. The CFA franc not only determines economic policies but also shapes the global alliances and trade. It has enabled France to retain influence as these nations deposit a large portion of their government reserves in the French treasury.
Now what happened is most French African countries, when they got independence, they actually had to get into an agreement with France whereby it was economic agreement, development agreement, whereby they had to use the CFA franc, which was, and also they could not have a central bank, they had to use the French central bank, and all exports, earnings had to be paid into the French central bank.
Questo è un bambino che lavora in una miniera d'oro in Burkina Faso. Il Burkina Faso è una delle nazioni più povere del mondo. Per il Burkina Faso, che ha l'oro, la Francia stampa moneta coloniale. In cambio pretende che finiscano nelle casse del tesoro francese il 50% di tutto quello che il Burkina Faso esporta.
This included a requirement that member states deposit half their exchange reserves at the French treasury plus another 20% for financial liabilities, meaning member states retained access only to 30% of their money.
You see, this is what I actually hate. You can smell the smell of being sold out. How did the governments of these nations agree to such an agreement? I'm gonna be straightforward and blunt, no disrespect, but in SA they would make you wear a ring of fire. But I digress. So, what are the economic consequences of this arrangement? Is it beneficial as it seems? Or was it another way of economic enslavement? Call it neocolonialism. Wangtswar. Critics argue that it limits these nations' economic sovereignty, preventing them from utilizing their own reserves for development. It's like depositing your money at the bank, Wanswar. Mara, anyway, after depositing your money, after so many years, let's say you want to build a house to better your life, the bank will say you cannot access the money you need for your development. There, in this metaphorical story, the bank is the National Bank of France and the person who wants to build the house. In the nations under CFA franc, I'm pretty sure Otomo one of the twisted economic reality these countries face. Proponents claim that the CFA franc promotes fiscal discipline and low inflation. However, the reality is much more complex. While the nations have substantial reserves, they cannot easily access them, which can hinder development. As you can imagine, that metaphorical story about the bank and the person who wants to build his house. Moreover, it's like depositing your money in a bank but being unable to access it when needed. Another issue lies in exchange rates, man. The CFA franc's peg to the euro can hinder these nations' competitiveness in the global markets. What? Economic savant, but bang, how? Well, a high exchange rate can make their exports less competitive, leading to lower demand and profitability for local producers. I hope Wankalohan.
When the euro appreciated against the dollar from 2000 to 2009, the value of the CFA franc got higher. But this made local Senegalese rice more expensive than imported rice from Thailand. So Senegal, which was trying to build its own domestic rice industry, instead saw Thai rice wipe out local rice farmers. So because domestic products are expensive, this makes export-driven growth nearly impossible, which is necessary to lead a country out of poverty.
Paul Obambi is the president of the Brazzaville Chamber of Commerce. He thinks that the fall of the CFA franc is not only bad news for the economy. A weaker currency makes Congo's exports, of which oil makes up the largest share, more competitive.
Imagine a business owner who borrowed money in US dollars and over time the exchange rate fluctuates. This can lead to an increase in the cost of foreign debt, which affects these nations too. I don't think you understand the nature of exchange rates and foreign debt. So, here's another story. Guys, imagine you are a business owner who borrowed money from the bank, like USA. Let's say Chase, maybe JP Morgan. Let's say you ask for a small business loan of 2.5 million US dollars.
I can see what they're doing, what he's doing. I can see it, I feel it. He's cooking.
Let me show you this exchange rate sword. You ask for 2.5 million US dollars. I will not answer the interest rates. I want you to understand the exchange rate sword, not interest. So, 2.5 million US dollars in 2016. and then they say you have to pay them back in 2020. Let's say the exchange rate was $1 cost 15 rands in 2016. So calculation time. So $2.5 million times 15 rands. That's 37 million rands, which you will have to pay back. Remember, easy, no interest rate. So after 4 years, Pat Piper comes to collect his money. So you have to pay the piper.
Griselda, seriously, it's time to pay the piper. Now go get my checkbook.
So in the last 4 years, the South African rand exchange rate depreciated from $1 being 15 rands to $1 being 20 rand. So Vona Ashi, this is it. $2.5 million times 20 rands. Now that's $50 million. Here, that's 50 million rands. Now you'll have to cough up that extra 13 million rands. Now this is how an increase in the exchange rate can lead to an increase to the cost of foreign currency debt. Guys, bonang, it's official. Get a standing ovation. Lena di savant, hanyane, bit by bit.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm.
So hit that like button and subscribe. Wabona loina. Ukonna smarter just by the virtue of watching the videos. Tsaka. Artsolimpele. Yeah, no kinako. Let's talk about the political instabilities and corruption in some of these nations.
It has been sort of a stigma. It has been a stigma on French foreign policy for a long time. This sense of a rotating door between African strongmen and presidents and the French presidential palace, and they'd come with briefcases of cash.
Which was caused by the corrupt administration. Well, that's putting it nicely.
There were two kinds of Negroes. There was that old house Negro and the field Negro. And the house Negro always looked out for his master.
Keradi Kunz, house niggas who were put in the positions of power, only to serve France, the works. Let's give France special deals kind of shit.
They could not, France was a country which could only sort of had the first choice of mining any mineral resources. Yeah, so basically it was a neo-colonial situation.
Investors feel that France has got a lot of monopoly, and actually France have got the first right to any mineral resources in these countries.
Bo a president who owns luxury cars in a country which is rich in natural resources, but its citizens live in abject poverty. Coups, political assassinations, betrayals, the kind of info that will terraform your brain. Scary shit. Freddy Krueger, nah man, Freddy is in the kids section or Galagari toy. Compared to this, Freddy's nightmare is actually a beautiful dream. Kuvataka your worst nightmare. Hey, Arieng, but emanyana, go drink some water. 10-second water break. Some leaders have used their positions for personal gain, leading to economic hardships and even refugee crisis. This country, Gabon, Kovataka one case, Ash. Gabon's president was worth $130 million. Gabon's uranium powered France and its military, nukes. And its oil was pumped by the French state-owned oil company ELF, or the Central African Republic president, who was backed by France. Sorry, I'm going to butcher this one. Jean Bedel Bokassa. And this country has been in shambles ever since. Bona, to give you a scope of what's happening in the Central African Republic. In 2019, life expectancy was just over 53. And in April 2022, more than 737,000 are registered as refugees. The total population of that country is approximately 4.8 million people. So, almost 1/5 of the whole population is registered as refugees, and it's all in the Franc zones, whereby France backs up dictators, and these dictators end up doing more harm than good. Honestly, they are in it to make themselves richer by depositing the money they got from their corrupt deals into French bank accounts. The irony in this situation is that most of these revolutions started because of they actually wanted complete freedom so that they could build their countries and enjoy the fruits of their labor before France hijacked their movements, which is sad. What I mentioned above, not a few cases, just a penny in reality. I can discuss all the cases. But in the end, the CFA franc system has both proponents and critics, but it remains a complex issue with far-reaching consequences economically and financially. Now you understand wang understand hore France still has a lot of soft power in the continent, and it's not only currency but militarily too.
I expect each one of us to take responsibility to be truthful. France does not have an imperialistic agenda, nor does it have an economic agenda.
Since 1960, France has invaded Africa more than 50 times.
To preserve its hegemony, France has intervened militarily on the continent 40 times.
Now, as we just heard in that report, security issues are another key part of French President Emmanuel Macron's policy for Africa. How does security also fit into this reform?
Relations between Francophone Africa and the former colonial power have also been defined by France's military involvement in the continent. In 2013, France responded to Mali's call for help. It's the beginning of Operation Serval, a counter-terrorism mission in the Sahel region that will later make way for Operation Barkhane. Both interventions have been met with skepticism, while others have acknowledged that it has contributed to stability in the region.
It's crazy. France has bases and kitsedinch. So they went from tanks to banks and back to tanks with a lot of fucking banks. Damn. These people, you have to give it to them. They were playing coy, but by structuring this cooperation deal, they came out on top, just like USA did now we signed the deal of the century with Saudi Arabia. But I digress. That will be discussed on the next video. Back to CFA franc. So, what's the solution? My audience at least one solution. The next solution will be discussed. Go to commenting. So, uskachabo comment. Voice your opinion. I mean, this is why I make these videos, Anger. So, solution ash. But before solution, the question we have to ask ourselves: how can these nations achieve economic independence and sovereignty? One approach is to break free from their fiscal bondage and gain complete financial freedom from CFA franc.
50% of our currency reserves will no longer be held in the French treasury.
Mo ukopela kudita. They will coup you. Babia puppet. No, I mean Rinkisa. I will start with their problems. They technically outsourced their country's reserve banks. Kera central bank. Imagine outsourcing the most crucial part of the economy to a foreign nation. I mean your former colonial master.
And this currency, beyond simply the name, it had these concrete requirements, as we heard. You had to keep each of the countries that use this currency had to keep half of their reserves in France's treasury, in France. Can you imagine having to keep your money on another continent, in another country's, your former colonial master's treasury?
By the way, I don't particularly like central banks. They are just too shady. And here's a kick. The South African Reserve Bank is actually private. Like most of these central banks, they will tell you an excuse like politicians can control the central bank. Why? The most basic reason is if you have no knowledge about running the central bank, it's actually a conflict of interest. You'll end up printing money to please the people or yourself, but in the end, you will meet the Reserve Bank's ultimate weapon: inflation. But USA Iran I keep on getting carried away. Take it spoiler. But one understand. So the solution. The first, financial sovereignty. A radical economic policy. Monetary independence.
So they're basically unmooring this. They're like, give us our own currency.
The West African countries, 8 of them out of the 14 are the ones who have decided we want to do away with the CFA franc.
A French representative official sat on the central bank board of this monetary union in Africa.
Financial sovereignty would allow these nations to have full control over their monetary policies, including the ability to print and manage their own currencies.
50% of our currency reserves will no longer be held in the French treasury.
Let me add some nuance to it. Imagine a continent where nations once bound by a common currency embark on a journey to rediscover their monetary identity. That is perfect. didn't water anything down, guys. I know her already Tom Cop. Solution number 2. Inflation control.
And so the imperatives of European countries, fiscal discipline and fighting inflation, end up shaping the very different world of Western and Central Africa.
Independent monetary policies would enable these countries to control inflation much more effectively by adjusting interest rates and money supply to meet their domestic economic conditions. This can create a more stable economic environment. Some nuance, please. Explore the subtle nuance of inflation control because it is very delicate, where countries take control of their monetary levers. One more solution, with some nuance of course. Exchange rate flexibility.
In recent weeks, demand for the dollar has increased. We've been selling it at 690 francs per unit. Sometimes people come to buy dollars, but we can't give them any because we don't have them.
As a result, many Congolese people are rushing to buy US dollars, and money changers like Zachary Oko are struggling to keep up with demand. Now, the exchange rate on the informal market far exceeds the official rate of 650 francs to the dollar.
With their own currencies, these nations could have more flexibility in setting exchange rates, which could promote trade and economic growth. They could adjust their exchange rates to maintain competitiveness in the global markets. Assisi Spice. Picture a world where currencies fluctuate like tides, where CFA countries set their own exchange rates. This intricate dance between currencies sparks curiosity about the delicate balance between competitiveness and stability in the globalized economy, which is a scam. It's already solution saga. But I'm not the only one with these kinds of solutions. So comment your solution to this dilemma. So guys, as we wrap up part 1 of our exploration of the economics of the dirty CFA franc, did you notice I did not say anything about the recent coups?
Friday, since the military transition in this country, Friday prayers have been held here, right outside the French military base. Hundreds of people are in attendance. And in today's sermon, the Imam was preaching patience, saying that in a divorce between a man and a woman, things take time. Similarly, he says, Niger is divorcing France, and that's going to take time.
It's a fast-moving situation here, so several developments happening this Wednesday. The junta in Niger has today put out a statement accusing France of several things, of having a plan to destabilize Niger.
Why is Emmanuel Macron now saying he doesn't recognise our authorities, when he's recognised juntas in other countries like Gabon and Chad? That's what has made us angry, and we think France takes us for idiots.
Those opposed to the coup believe the departure of French troops could be dangerous.
In the fight against the terrorists, France is a key partner that provides most of the intelligence that helps us beat the terrorists trying to attack Niger.
But many Nigerians are frustrated with the lack of progress when it comes to the war on terror. Adama is originally from Tillaberi, one of the regions worst affected by jihadi violence. She tells me her mother's cousin, a village chief, was assassinated by terrorists 7 months ago. They killed him by slitting his throat. She doesn't believe the French have successfully reduced terrorism in the Sahel.
And France's crazy protest.
The French government has said it is considering all options, including declaring a state of emergency.
Paris, supposed to be the city of love, is exploding again.
We are heading overseas, taking you first to these protests in Paris. Hundreds of thousands of protesters back on the streets today, clashing with riot police over President Emmanuel Macron's proposed rise in the national retirement age from 62 to 64.
Specially. Remember that understanding these complex issues is the first steps towards change. Information in Al-Maka more than a sword, much more deadlier in fact. Take that from this video. That wraps up the first episode on the currency playlist. So stay tuned for part 2, where we delve into the intricacies of the US dollar and its global impact. The currency which can actually export inflation. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Enough!
You are all of you beneath me. I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that. Bruh.
Your support drives me to uncover more economic mysteries. Ke lebohela support ya lena. Join me next time as we continue to explore the economics of our world. Naki economic savant, ke mfana sosha, ke mfana kasi, and I sting like a cold breeze. See you in the next one, guys. I'm out.